Hello, Human and Community Service majors. My name is Katie Woolman, and I am your career counselor. Today, I'd like to share some great information about resumes and cover letters to help you be prepared for success with those documents. So let's get started. So I do always like to share a couple of disclaimers whenever I do a resume workshop. So just bear with me here for a couple of these. And the reason I like to start with these is because these are good things to know while you're thinking about the advice that I'm sharing today and thinking about your own resume and cover letter. There are many effective resume formats out there. I'm going to show you a sample in the presentation, and I've got a couple samples in the packet of information that I've prepared for you. However, there are lots of different resume formats out there. Yours may look different than some of the samples that I share, and that doesn't mean they're not effective. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll understand what makes an effective resume and can evaluate your own. Employers have differing preferences. So as we're going to discuss, resumes are a marketing tool to get your future employer's attention. They don't all agree on what they like in terms of resume styles, but I can definitely share a lot of what they do like in terms of the overall formatting, content, and what is very likely to move them toward action, inviting you in for an interview. You're likely to receive conflicting advice about your resume. You may meet with myself to review your resume, which I'm happy to do. You may meet with someone in your field or a professor, or even have a family member who's in human resources, and we might tell you to do different things. That's okay, that's going to happen. What you can do is gather information from a variety of experts and make the decision that you think is going to work best for you. Resumes are not black and white, there's a lot of gray area there. It's good to consider the Career Center as generalists. While we know a lot about every major on campus, both undergraduate and graduate, we do work with all the majors. So we are going to have a good understanding of general resume styles, formats, best practices, and we encourage you to start with us and then move toward someone in your field to get a little bit more specific advice. I personally happen to be in your field of human services, so I know a little bit more in depth about your field than perhaps some other folks might. So I can definitely offer a little bit more customized assistance specifically to you. So let's get started. What is the purpose of a resume? This is really important to know when you're crafting one. It's a marketing tool. It can't be your whole story. It cannot be the entirety of what you offer to an employer. It's a marketing tool. We want to be interesting enough to that reader, to that potential employer or potential graduate school, enough to have them want to ask us in for an interview. That's the whole goal and purpose of a resume. Some sub-purposes or other purposes, if you will, are to highlight your strengths. So we really want to have a good understanding of what our strengths are. If that's something that you have trouble calling up, we can have an appointment about that. I love to empower students to own, claim, and be able to speak to their strengths. That's really important in your job search. You're also communicating your fit for that particular position, and that's really important when you're applying for a specific position, and we'll get into that. You also summarize your education, experiences, accomplishments. You want to really highlight the skill sets that you have, and there's a better way to do that I'm going to share with you. Any tools that you have or certifications that you've earned throughout your classes or through your other experiences. And we really want to show versus tell. We want our skills and accomplishments to come to life for that employer so that they can start to picture us at their workplace. So we want to show versus tell, and I'll explain that more here in a second. This is a good example of a really nice resume format. So as I mentioned, there are multiple formats that can be effective for you. Some are more graphic than others. In fact, more modern styles of resumes make use of color and blocks of color and maybe a logo that you create. You want to be really careful with those. Those can be effective as long as it is clear, clean, and targeted to your audience. This is a good example of a more traditional looking resume that is really effective because it's clean, clear, easy to read. The font's very easy to read. We're making use of lines going across the section headings to break up the visual of our resume for that employer. And it's good to know that as much time as we spend on our resume, an employer is not going to take a whole lot of time to review it before they decide whether we're in the yes or the no pile. For human services occupations, they certainly drill down a little bit deeper and spend a little bit more time on resumes for candidates who make the cut. But in order to make that first cut, we have to make sure that our resume is easy to read above all else. And again, making it easy for that employer to find what they're looking for very, very quickly. We usually start with our name as a big, bold font size and our contact information. It's up to you nowadays whether or not you include your physical address. You don't necessarily need that. An employer is very unlikely to want to mail you anything these days. So especially if you want to protect your privacy, or if you post your resume to a large website and lots of people are looking at it, it could be a really good idea to just leave your city and state as your address and make sure to include your phone number, your email address, and your LinkedIn profile if you have one. This person has chosen to highlight the fact that they're bilingual in that heading, and you're welcome to do that as well. Especially in human services, being multilingual is a huge advantage in the workplace, as it is in most other workplaces. Then you might have an education section. Now, in between your heading of all your contact information and education, you might have an objective statement. That's not absolutely necessary anymore these days on your resume. However, you might want to think about including an objective if your background, your education, your experiences are unclear as to what you're targeting in a career, and if you don't have the opportunity to submit a cover letter. A cover letter really takes care of answering that objective question. So a lot of our students have very full resumes and they just don't have room for an objective statement. So that if that's the case for you, don't worry about it not being there. Now, this advice, again, encourages you to target your resume to your audience. We recommend that you have what's called a master resume, and this is one in which you're the target audience. You're trying to keep track of everything you've done from college and beyond. There are a few exceptions as to information you might want to keep from high school on your resume, but usually as an upperclassman, we're focusing on college and beyond. And a master resume can be as long as it needs to be. It's just a place for you to keep track of everything, all the dates, the duties, the accomplishments, because those can be difficult to remember from year to year. Then when you're applying for a job, especially as an undergraduate right out of college, you want to try to keep your resume to a page. In human services, it's okay to go longer than that, but usually for new grads, they want us to stick to a page. So that's what you're shooting for on your targeted resume. And I'm going to talk more a little bit about how to target the resume as we move forward. In your education section, you want to include the name of the degree that you're getting. You're getting a Bachelor of Arts in Human and Community Service. Your school does not have a name. You can see the sample here as a named school. Your school does not have a name, so you don't have to worry about that. You only put your anticipated graduation date. You don't put when you started. And you also don't necessarily list institutions that you didn't get a degree from, unless you really want to emphasize some experience from that institution. If you studied abroad, that's definitely something you should include. And a note about GPA, if it's above a 3.0, I think it's great to list on your resume. Some people have the opinion that you need a 3.5 and above to list it on your resume. So you might want to ask a couple of different people about that and make sure that everything that goes on that resume is something that is a selling point for you. After education, we usually have a related experience section or a work history section, and that can vary depending on your experiences. I'll tell you that employers really value related experience. So I would encourage you to have this next section after education called related experience. I'm going to show you an example of that here in a minute and highlight the internship that you're currently doing. Now we're going to talk about action verbs and bullet statements. So for each job that you have, you want to not only say your title and the name of the organization, location, and dates, but you want to describe what you did there, describe accomplishments, skills that you used. That is super important to your reader. So again, the purpose of doing this is to show our skills, abilities, and qualities through action rather than telling them. So I mentioned earlier, we want to show versus tell on our resume. Employers have told us for years that a skills section with a list of your skills is not very effective for them. They feel that anybody can type out words on a resume. What's more effective for your audience is if you show those skills in action. So think about a skill that you might want to include on a skills list, and think about where you showed that skill and adding it as a bullet point in your experience section. This is also where you can use keywords. So specifically when you're creating your targeted resume, it's a really good idea to cut and paste your job description that you're targeting or that you found. You found a job you want to apply for, cut and paste that job description into a Google Doc for yourself and try to get a sense of what keywords they're really using. So for instance, if they use the word creative 6 times in that job description, if you're at all creative, you want to make sure that that is in your bulleted statement somewhere. So this is a great place to really show your fit for that position, and that's going to be really important for getting chosen for an interview. So these are some really good examples of your bullet points. Now, when you describe your work experiences, you don't use personal pronouns. You don't say I or my. You start with an action word. So it can feel a little different than other writing that you're used to. So you have your job title, the company, the location, the dates, and then you have bullet points describing what you did. That's a heck of a lot easier to read than a paragraph with lots of I statements in there. So again, clean, clear, easy to read is always what we're shooting for on our resume. So this is a good example with in the parentheses what the word is kind of reflecting. So the bullet point would read, prioritize multiple tasks in a fast-paced environment to meet weekly deadlines. But the action word, task, and result is your formula for writing excellent bullet points. So here's another example. Collaborate with multidisciplinary healthcare team, optimizing patient care and outcomes. So this is really where you can showcase those skills with those action words. Try to avoid using the same word over and over again. Try to avoid using the words assisted or worked over and over again. It can be really difficult to come up with these bullet points, so I'm happy to sit down with you and look at your resume and help you with that, as are a lot of our staff folks are trained here in the Career Center to help with that. So as I mentioned before, we really want to showcase related experience after education, and we want to tailor that to the job description. It really doesn't matter if it was paid work or not. So your internship is likely to be unpaid in human services, and that is a really valuable experience for your future employer or your graduate school that you're targeting. So like I said, after education, you want to have this related experience section. Again, it can be volunteering that you've done. It can be work you've done with your church, if that's related to human services, that you can really think broadly about that, because employers really value candidates with directly related experience. So think broadly about that and think about having hopefully a couple of different opportunities here in your related experience section. On your master resume, you want to create bullet points, as I showed you before, with an action word, task, result. But when you apply to a specific job, you really want to tailor those bullet points to the job description. We never want to stretch the truth on our resume. We never want to lie. So we don't want to make something up that we didn't do. But oftentimes we see that a job description says something in a way, maybe that we did that, we performed that skill, or we have that skill, but we said it in a different way. We want to use the exact words that that job description uses anytime we can. And I'm going to talk about why that's important next. Keywords. These are your resume's best friend. So there is something called an ATS out there, folks. It's called an applicant, that stands for Applicant Tracking System. This is a system that larger companies use in order to manage the recruitment process. An applicant tracking system makes use of a computer algorithm to review all of the applications, and they look for keywords. So it's a system that looks for keywords within your marketing documents, usually your cover letter and your resume, and the system only passes through the applicants with the keywords to the human beings in human resources. So while that prospect is a little daunting and a little scary, know that there are great ways that you can make it past that applicant tracking system. And a lot of it is using your keywords. So look at that job description. I can't emphasize that enough. Whenever I review a student's resume and cover letter, I always ask to see the job description because then I know who the target audience is. I always like to use my creative mind and put myself in the shoes of the employer. Okay, if I'm this employer, what am I looking for in this job description? What would be the things that I would really prioritize from this job description? And I want to make sure that that is in my marketing materials if at all possible. Other ways to incorporate keywords are thinking about buzzwords for your field. So in human services, we certainly might prioritize things like client interaction or interpersonal communication skills, time management, ability to multitask. We would want to think about having a caring and compassion attitude toward clients and people in general. We might want, depending on our setting, we might talk about assessments that we've done with clients. Evaluation can be very important in this field. So thinking about buzzwords for your career and thinking about ways that you might be able to incorporate those on your resume is a good idea. Believe it or not, learning outcomes from your syllabi from all your classes can be really helpful too. They use a lot of buzzwords for your field. So if you've kept copies of those syllabi or can find them on Canvas, it's a great way to mine great buzzwords for your field. LinkedIn profiles are another good resource for you. So if you're connected with folks who work in your field, you can look at how they describe themselves and how they describe their previous work experiences and borrow their ideas. It's not plagiarism at this point, I promise. Okay, so as we're talking about LinkedIn, this is a fabulous tool that is super important to know about nowadays. Most recruitment is happening virtually right now, and we are likely to see the trend toward just more and more virtual recruitment, even as the pandemic and daily life gets a little bit more back to what we're used to. So a LinkedIn profile, for those of you who have not heard of this before, it's a social media professional networking tool. You can create a profile for yourself, you can link your resume, and you can connect with other people. You can also look for jobs on LinkedIn. So it's a fabulous tool. And again, nowadays it's almost essential to have in your toolkit. And you can see from the sample resumes that I shared with you that the LinkedIn profile URL is a great thing to put in your heading. And also, if you're finding that you have a very long resume, again, I work with a lot of Lenore-Rhine students who are heavily involved on campus and in the community. It's a great thing, and your resume is long. That's good, but when I've asked employers about that situation in the past, some are very strict in terms of wanting a one-page resume. So I've asked them, well, what can we do to, we're missing some things for some of my students. So they said, make sure to include that LinkedIn URL on the resume, and then I can look at all the details on LinkedIn. So especially if you're having to cut out some information or some experiences that you've had that you think are very valuable to communicate to a future employer, then you can shorten it on the resume and provide your LinkedIn profile so they can get a lot more details about you. So that's a fabulous tool in your self-marketing toolkit. Other sections that might be included on your resume. So everybody's resume should look a little different. We don't want everybody's resume to look the same. So you might also have these special sections in addition to your heading, your education and your work experience. You might have honors, academic awards and accomplishments, athletics, leadership, professional development you've done, especially at your internship. Any research that you've been a part of. Definitely if you've studied abroad, that should be prominent on your resume. It's very attractive to employers. Definitely if you speak multiple languages, also very marketable. Computer skills. Those might be section headings on your resume, and it really just depends on what experiences you've had and what skills you have to offer. So just kind of quickly to wrap up the resume portion. We're going to talk about common mistakes that we can make and really wanting to avoid on our resume. So typos and grammatical errors are a big no-no on our resume. That's why it's always good to have somebody else look at your marketing materials before you send it. Sometimes you might have an employer who's looking at a fabulous candidate, but they've spelled a couple things wrong. Especially, I've seen a resume come across my desk that said they were very detail orientated. So they said they were detail oriented, but they weren't paying attention to the details. So watch out for those on your resume. I've also seen a lot of people, very intelligent students here, misspell Lenore Ryan on their resume. That's a big no-no as well, as you can imagine. But it's very normal for that to happen. You're reading your resume as if you know it's supposed to be read, as how you want it to be read. So it's very hard to catch little typos like that. So again, please feel free to use our services to review your resumes before you send them out. So a resume that doesn't have a lot of specifics, doesn't have those bullet points, won't make it through to the next stage. Attempting a one-size-fits-all, there again, I've talked about a targeted resume. If you try to send the same resume out to 50 different companies, you will not get the same response. Customizing your resume, yes, takes longer, but it's much more effective if you take that time. So we want to highlight accomplishments as much as we can, rather than just the duties that we've performed at our job. Sometimes your supervisor at that employer can really help you come up with accomplishments if you're having a hard time with that, and of course we can help with that too. So again, a resume that's too long or too short can be a mistake. A resume with no action verbs would definitely be a mistake. Not listing important information. I've seen resumes that don't include a phone number. That's very likely how you're going to be contacted by the employer at some point. So you want to make sure that all that important information is there. If your resume is just too busy, again, maybe too many graphics, hard to read, too much information that's cluttered, that can unfortunately put you at the top of the no stack. Incorrect contact information is a mistake that people make. So again, the worst thing that could happen is you're this great candidate for this job. You've had a typo in your email and your phone number and they can't get a hold of you. That would be sad. So just making sure that all those little details are taken care of really go a long way towards you getting that interview. So now we're going to talk about cover letters. The purpose of a cover letter is to introduce yourself. So they've got your resume. The cover letter is your chance to talk about yourself a little bit more and answer the question, why choose me? Why am I a fit for this job? That's really what you're trying to get at in that cover letter. We don't want to restate our resume in paragraph form. We don't want to say, as you can see on my resume, I'm graduating with this degree and I've had this job. They're going to see that on the resume. We want to customize each letter for each job and company, as I said. So again, cut and paste that job description into a Google Doc. Really answer that job description, especially with your soft skills and character traits on the cover letter. So again, we don't want to restate the facts that can be found on our resume. What doesn't work as much on a resume as a list of soft skills or character traits or things that you're passionate about. But guess what? That's very important to most employers. So your cover letter is your opportunity to talk about that. You really want to try to showcase your personality in the cover letter, and that can be a challenge. So cover letters are challenging to write. You've written 10-page papers, you've done research projects, you sit down to write this cover letter thinking it's going to be no problem, and a lot of students really struggle. So just know you're not alone in that. If you've struggled writing a cover letter in the past, once you write an effective cover letter, you will totally get the formula and be off and running from there, but we can definitely help you work on this aspect of your marketing materials because it can be a challenge. In your cover letter, name drop if appropriate. So if your supervisor, let's say for your internship, is referring you to a position, and with their permission, you always want to ask first, you can mention their name in the cover letter. It's a good idea to ask first because you also want to make sure that dropping their name will be a positive reflection for you. Again, just like with the resume, grammar and spelling matter on the cover letter. So making sure that you have someone else editing your cover letter is really important so that we're not showing lots of errors on the cover letter. That's an easy way for that employer to cut down their applicant pool. Research the company and include in that cover letter why you want to work there. So again, we can't really do that on the resume. The cover letter is the perfect opportunity to do that. And we can scan our signature at the end to show a lot of attention to detail, customization of our letter, and it makes it feel like a real letter that they used to get in the mail. So here's an example of the top half of a cover letter. Taking that same sample resume that I showed you earlier, we just simply cut and paste the heading of that resume onto our cover letter. That's a good idea because it creates this cohesive marketing package. It looks like the two were meant to be together, and that works really well for you, for an employer. We want to date our letter. We want to address our letter to the company and hopefully a specific person. So sometimes on a job description, you'll see who to address your cover letter to. If this position is reporting to a specific person, or if they list a contact person for you to be able to follow up with, then that's the name you use. A lot of times they don't include names in job descriptions. So when that's the case, rather than saying a very generic "to whom it may concern," use some version of team. So if this cover letter is going to Alex Lee Inc., let's say I didn't know the name of the manager for human resources. And let's say I know that this position is going to work with account management. So I might say, "Dear Alex Lee Account Management Team." The more customized you can make it, the better. But if you can't customize it to a specific department or aren't sure what that would be, you can customize it to the company. "Dear Alex Lee Inc. Team." And that's a great way to customize the greeting of your letter. You want to start out the content of the letter with describing exactly what you're applying for and how you found out about it. Right off the bat, that's information you need to include. You can say that you're eager to apply. You can say you're passionate. Using those words that it may seem like they're less professional, but especially in our field of human services, communicating those soft skills and that passion and that drive and your attitude, that's definitely important to include on the cover letter. And again, your whole thesis of your cover letter is that you think you're a fit for what they're looking for. So you can make that statement in the top of that first paragraph. The second paragraph focuses on tangibly why you're a fit for that position. So you want to look at the position description and you want to reference it. You don't have to say it as overtly as this, but you want to explain from your background why you're a fit for what they're looking for. You don't necessarily need a certain number of paragraphs on the resume, or excuse me, on the cover letter. And in fact, let's say you wanted to highlight two different aspects of your experience, then you might want to use 2 paragraphs to do that. Then here at this next paragraph that starts with Alex Lee Inc., this is a paragraph that a lot of candidates don't include. So if you include it, it's likely to help you stand out. This is a paragraph about why you want to work for them. So most of the letter is about why they should want to hire you, but this, if you include a short paragraph about why you want to work for them, that shows the company that you've done your research. You're a fit not only for the position, but for the company, the environment, the culture, the mission, the values. So look at their website. There's usually an About Us section, and that's a great place to find their mission. Any awards that they've won, you want to mention an award if they've won something like that. Or if that person who referred you to the position has said that they're a fabulous place to work, you can mention that here as well. So that's kind of the top half of the letter. Bottom half. Again, I'm just showing you that same targeted paragraph to the company and why you want to work for the company. Then you just want to close it out. So with some sort of confident statement, it's great. I hope you'll agree that I'm an excellent fit for your position. If you know you can follow up. So if you know you've got the person's contact information, either phone number or email, then it's a great idea to say that you're going to follow up in a week. That's a great proactive thing to do in your job search. If you see a job description that you don't have the contact information for, then don't say you're going to follow up. So only put that in your cover letter if you're sure you're going to be able to follow up. And then you want to encourage them to call you for an interview. One thing you don't want to do is be so bold as to say, I plan to follow up to schedule an interview. That would be very bold on your part. And some career fields like that boldness. If you're in a high-level sales position, a sales industry, or fundraising, that would probably work. But for the rest of us, you don't want to be that bold or that aggressive. Then you want to include your number and your email address, even though I just noticed I didn't correct that email address. Don't pay attention to that. I'm using different templates here to show you this today. So use your correct email address. And then you'll see there's a signature right above the name. You can scan your signature. save it as an image file and insert it into the document. I know students cannot scan on campus, so if you need help with that, you're welcome to ask for that help in the Career Center, and we're happy to do that for you. So that is a good overview of resumes and cover letters. And the best thing I can tell you is that we're here to help. So a lot of these tips are very general, can be applied generally to everybody, but your situation and experiences and background are unique to you. So let us know if we can help. You can stop by the Career Center Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And sometimes you can get help immediately if someone is available. If you'd like to try to schedule an appointment ahead of time, we're happy to have that as well. And so we can meet you in person, socially distanced and masked, of course. We can meet you via Zoom if that's more convenient to you. And you can request an appointment on Handshake with the URL on this slide. So we hope that this was really helpful for you today, and that you've gotten some good information to help you with your marketing materials, and that you know that the Career Center is here to help you with that. That's what we're here for. We love to do it. We want to really help you reach your goals and achieve the goals and dreams that you've set for yourself, and the resume and cover letter are a big piece of that. So let us know how we can help. And as always, go Bears.